Welcome to the show. Here's the uncomfortable bit. By the time a worker cops the blame in a report, the incident usually started days, months, sometimes years earlier in a meeting room. The supervisor says, "Just get it done." A manager signs off a schedule that doesn't match reality. A leader normalizes shortcuts because the job still gets done and no one got hurt. Yet. Then one day, bang, everybody suddenly discovers safety again. Funny that. Take the warehouse forklift case. Night shift, warehouse, forklift operator struck by his own forklift. Multiple injuries to the right leg. Now, if you're lazy, and plenty are, you stop at operator made a mistake. Wrap it up, print the report, go home. But ICAM doesn't let you get away with that sort of bargain bin thinking. You ask, what was the system of work? What were the procedures? What supervision was there? What was going on organisationally? If the answer is pressure, poor planning, vague instruction, no proper risk review, then the worker didn't invent the conditions. They inherited them. Same with the light vehicle rollover. This one's a beauty because the fingerprints are all over it. The rollover happened at 07:20 on 8th June 2017, 27 kilometres north of Redmont Camp in Western Australia. Contractor driver, Toyota Hilux, road was wet after 7 days of heavy rain. Pooled water, mud, slurry, bend in the road, windrow. Driver was exceeding the posted 80-kilometre speed limit. Right, that matters. But it's not the whole story. There was no formal task risk assessment for the driver operating alone in a remote area. The journey management plan was informal and not in accordance with company policy. No formalised training in place for the journey management plan. No follow-up of key actions from the previous 8 light vehicle rollovers in 18 months. 8. At that point, it's not a surprise anymore. It's a management system with a hobby. And the level crossing case? That one really shows how leadership decisions hide in plain sight. A train and a road train collide. Police rock up, see the lights were working 4 hours later, decide the truckie ran the flashing lights. Nice simple story. Neat. Wrong. The crossing design had history baked into it. The induction loop was put at 260 metres, not the standard 300, because of another road crossing. That gave 22 seconds of warning at 25 kilometres an hour. Enough for a double road train, not a triple. Triple road trains were banned. Then, years earlier, the operation changed from 2 crew to 1 crew with remote control. Drivers started operating from the front footwell, outside the original design intent. Management didn't approve, but they didn't stop it either. After a near miss, they armour-plated the front of the train instead of fixing the practice. That's not control, that's decorating the coffin. So here's the tension. If leadership decisions shaped the time pressure, the training gaps, the design compromises, the tolerated workarounds, the weak defences, why do so many reports stop at the worker? Easy. Workers are visible. Leadership is upstream, and upstream is where things get political. In ICAM language, leadership usually doesn't show up wearing a high-vis vest and holding the broken bit. It shows up as organisational factors, contractor management, training, procedures, communication, management of change, organisational culture, learning, risk management. That's where the grown-up causes live. Look at that solar farm cable misidentification job. No one got hurt, but it's gold for understanding failure chains. Cables terminated without testing. No labels. Scope of work issued verbally. Subcontractor not given clear formal requirements. Drawings not shared. No dedicated electrical QA function on site. Contract timings too tight. Awarded on cost and immediate availability. Project run with lots of on-the-fly decision-making. That is leadership in stereo. The workers at the sharp end were dealing with the mess, but the mess was assembled upstream by planning, contract, communication, and change failures. And management of change, MC in the code set, is one of the sneakiest. Leaders love change when it sounds efficient. New roster, new contractor, new workflow, new design, fewer people, faster turnaround. Beauty. What they don't always love is admitting it is change, and therefore needs risk assessment. That's why serious incidents so often trace back to change that was never treated like change. In the grader near-miss case, workers were 1 to 2 metres from a reversing grader. No designated spotter. No positive communication. No two-way radio. No agreed hand signals. No clear line of sight. No risk assessment done for the new task, even though it was mandatory. Area supervisor and leading hand weren't aware the grader was operating without a spotter. Unsafe practices around mobile plant were ignored and went unchecked. Previous incidents and non-compliance had been managed poorly. Again, the workers were in the frame, but leadership built the frame. Now, personal confession. I've lost count of how many times I've heard, "Cam, it was operator error." That phrase should come with a tax. It's usually a cop-out. Not because people never make errors, of course they do. Slips, lapses, mistakes, violations, all real. But if your analysis stops there, you've done diagnosis by bumper sticker. You haven't investigated anything. You've just renamed the last visible act. The Pocket Guide says it plainly. Where human error is identified, the investigator must look beyond the error to find out why. Not who can we pin it on, why. Was supervision absent? Was training inadequate? Was there passive tolerance of violations? Were procedures unavailable, unclear, or routinely bypassed? Were incompatible goals in play? Safety on the poster, production in the bonus structure. That last one turns up all the time, by the way. And this is where fair and just culture matters. Properly used, it comes after the investigation, not before. You don't start by deciding who deserves a whack. You investigate the system first. Then, if there's uncertainty about accountability, you use a fair and just culture process to separate honest error, routine drift, situational violations, personal gain, reckless acts, the whole lot. But if you use accountability as a shortcut to avoid looking at leadership, that's not just culture, that's old school blame with better branding. Good leadership after an incident is not a performance about concern. It's not a sad face and a site-wide email. Lovely font though. What it actually looks like is this. Secure the scene, control the hazard, preserve the evidence, get the facts before they rot, and define the scope properly. Immediate actions first, planning second, then gather, organize, analyze, learn. Goal. It's simple, not easy, but simple. From a governance angle, leaders have duties. Acquire and keep up-to-date knowledge. Understand the operations and risks. Ensure the business has resources and processes. Ensure there are processes to receive and respond to incident information promptly. Verify the whole thing actually works. That's due diligence, not in theory, in practice. So when an investigation finds no training, no proper risk assessment, no follow-up on previous incidents, no audit, no effective contractor oversight, leaders shouldn't ask, how do we word this carefully? They should ask, how did we miss this? And what are we changing? And when you get to recommendations, don't serve up the usual soggy chips. Retrain, remind, reissue, refresh. Sometimes those are needed, sure, but the hierarchy of controls exists for a reason. Push higher, eliminate where you can, substitute, isolate, engineer. Administrative controls and PPE are the lower rungs, not the fantasy solution to every problem. In the level crossing case, stronger actions meant redesigning the crossing environment, changing signal logic, restricting train movements, fitting better control feedback. Real changes, not just telling drivers to try harder. Right actions that are smarter, specific, measurable, accountable, reasonable, timely, effective, reviewed. And for the love of all things decent, demand evidence. Good investigations use facts validated by records, interviews, scene observations, documents, photographs, maintenance history, training records. Not gossip, not assumptions, not everyone knows. Here's what I reckon. Leadership can absolutely drive failure. Quietly, gradually, bureaucratically. Through decisions, non-decisions, tolerated drift, unresolved actions, fake priorities, and changes no one risk assessed properly. But, and this is the bit worth hanging on to, Leadership can also drive the next safer outcome. Same mechanism, same influence, different choices. So the hard question isn't whether the worker made an error. The hard question is whether the people with authority are willing to see themselves in the causal chain and then do something about it. If they are, the report becomes a learning tool. If they're not, it's just paperwork with a logo. Thanks for listening.